All right, so today we're gonna dive into something pretty cool, I think.
Yeah.
And that's bootstrapping.
Bootstrapping, yeah.
And it's funny because like you hear so much about these, you know, these huge funding rounds and venture capital and angel investors.
Right, right.
But I feel like bootstrapping is kind of like this, maybe a little bit under the radar.
Yeah, it's like the quiet achiever, maybe,
Yeah.
in a startup world.
Yeah, it is the quiet achiever.
Yeah.
So, it sort of begs the question, like, is that traditional path of like constantly, trying to raise money, is that really the only way to do it? Or
Yeah, is that really the best way? I mean, that's a good question.
for, I think most startups.
Yeah, for most startups.
I think there's a really strong argument to be made that bootstrapping can be a much more powerful and even smarter approach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so we've dug into some really interesting articles, even a few books, just to kind of get like
Oh, yeah.
a well-rounded,
a holistic look at this whole
a holistic look
phenomenon.
at this whole approach.
Yeah.
And you, the listener, you're here because you want to kind of cut through all the noise and all the hype.
Absolutely.
And really get down to like what are the core insights here?
Get to the good stuff.
Yeah, so let's jump right into it and maybe even start with a question like, have you ever even thought about the fact that there might be a completely different and potentially like better way to build a successful startup?
Yeah, one that doesn't involve constantly, chasing after investors and giving away pieces of your company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about control because I think that's one of the most fundamental advantages of bootstrapping.
Huge.
Right?
I mean, one of the beautiful things about bootstrapping is that you retain complete control and ownership of your company.
Yeah, and what it really means, right?
Yeah.
Because when you take on outside investment, it's not just the money that you're taking on.
Right. You're also giving up a piece of your vision.
Yeah, you're giving up a piece of your company and you're giving up a piece of like control over the direction of the company.
Absolutely.
And with bootstrapping, you bypass all of that.
Yeah, you do.
You can stay true to that original vision.
To that initial spark.
Yeah, that initial spark. And it's not just the product.
Right.
It's the market that you want to go after.
Right.
It's the company culture that you want to build.
Absolutely.
There's no outside pressure to kind of conform to somebody else's expectations.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think a really great example of this is Mailchimp.
Oh, yeah. Mailchimp, classic example.
Yeah.
Founded back in 2001 by Ben Chestnut and Dan Curzius.
Yeah. And they deliberately chose to bootstrap.
They decided no outside funding for us.
Yeah.
We're going to grow this organically.
Yeah.
We're going to build it step by step, and we're going to stay in control.
And they did. And then they sold to Intuit in 2021 for $12 billion.
$12 billion with a B.
With a B.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's a testament to, what you can achieve.
Yeah.
When you bootstrap.
Yeah. And I think a key takeaway there is that if you have a strong vision for what you want to build.
Right.
And if you have that discipline.
Yeah.
You can achieve incredible success without giving up that control.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think that the takeaway there is that focus.
Yes.
That laser focus on your customer.
Yes.
Without all the noise of outside demands.
Yeah.
Can build immense value.
Yeah, it really can.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about profitability because I think that's another huge advantage of bootstrapping.
Absolutely.
So many startups that raise capital,
right?
They feel this intense pressure to grow.
Right. Grow at all costs.
Grow at all costs as quickly as possible.
Hockey stick growth, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for.
And a lot of times that comes at the expense of profitability.
It does, yeah, because investors, they want to see a quick return on their investment.
Yeah. They want to see that ROI.
Yeah.
And so that can push companies to make decisions that aren't necessarily in the best interest of the long-term health of the business.
Right. They might prioritize growth metrics over actually building a sustainable business model.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Bootstrapping completely flips that.
It flips the script.
It does because you have to be profitable almost from day one.
Right from the get-go.
Yeah, you're relying on your own resources.
Your own blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. And so profitability is not just like a nice to have.
Yeah.
It's essential.
Yeah.
It is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
And I think a great example of this is Basecamp.
Oh, Basecamp. Love Basecamp. Yeah. They've been bootstrapped since 1999.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansson.
Yeah, they're like the poster children.
They are.
For bootstrapping, I think.
Really are, yeah.
And they've always prioritized building a profitable business.
Yeah, keeping their customers happy.
Yes.
Over just, chasing that crazy growth.
Yeah.
At all costs.
And They've achieved steady and consistent revenue growth.
They have, yeah.
And they wrote a book called Rework.
Oh, yeah, Rework. It's a classic.
Yeah.
It's like a must-read for any entrepreneur.
It is. And it really advocates for this idea of simplicity.
Sustainability.
Yeah, sustainability.
You know, doing things differently.
And I think that aligns so perfectly with the bootstrapping philosophy.
It does, yeah. It's about building a business that lasts.
Yes.
Not just one that, burns bright and then fizzles out.
Yeah. I think that idea of sustainability, that's something that probably resonates with you as a listener.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you're here for that deep dive.
Yeah, you want the long-term perspective.
You want the long-term perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about resilience, because I think that's another a big one.
That's a big one.
When you bootstrap, you're forced to be resourceful.
Right.
You have limited resources. So you have to figure out how to make the most of what you have.
I gotta be scrappy.
You got to be scrappy. You got to be creative.
Yeah.
And that builds resilience.
Absolutely.
You learn to adapt. You learn to solve problems.
You learn to do more with less.
Yes, you learn to do more with less.
Yeah.
And I think GitHub is a fantastic example of this.
GitHub, oh yeah, another classic bootstrapping story.
Yeah, they bootstrapped their way to becoming like the world's leading platform for code hosting.
Yeah, they started in 2008. No external funding.
Yeah.
And their focus was just on delivering value to developers.
Yep.
That's it.
And they kept their costs low.
They reinvested their profits.
Yes.
They built this incredible, loyal user base.
Yeah.
And they eventually got acquired by Microsoft for $7.5 billion in 2018.
It's just insane.
It is. It's another testament to the power of bootstrapping.
Yeah.
And I think it highlights that resourcefulness that you develop when you bootstrap that can lead to really innovative solutions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about dilution, because I think that's something that,
Oh, yeah, dilution. That's a big one.
that a lot of founders don't really think about.
Right, especially early on.
Especially early on.
Yeah.
So every time you raise a round of funding,
You give up a piece of your company.
you give up equity
Equity, exactly.
over multiple rounds of funding.
That can really add up.
That can really add up, and you can end up owning a very small percentage of your own company.
Right. You start with this whole pie.
Yeah.
And every time you raise money,
You're slicing off a bigger and bigger
you're
piece.
giving away another slice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With bootstrapping, you avoid that.
You get to keep a much larger piece of the pie.
Yes.
Especially in the early stages.
Yeah.
And often for the long haul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Spanx is an incredible story of this.
Spanx, oh yeah, Sarah Blakely, amazing entrepreneur.
Amazing entrepreneur. She started the company with $5,000 of her own savings.
$5,000, that's it.
It bootstrapped the entire operation.
And she maintained 100% ownership.
100% ownership until 2021.
That's remarkable.
Yeah. And she built a billion-dollar empire.
A billion-dollar empire, all while retaining complete control.
Complete control.
And maximizing her personal wealth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about customer focus.
Oh, yeah. Customer focus, that's at the heart of any successful business.
It is.
Right.
And I think when you're bootstrapping, you have this incredible opportunity to really deeply understand and serve your customers.
Absolutely.
Because you're not constantly trying to please investors.
Right. You're not trying to hit those arbitrary growth targets.
Yeah, you're not chasing vanity metrics.
Exactly.
You can really focus on what matters, which is building a product that people love.
Right. And providing exceptional customer service.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think Patagonia is a great example of this.
Patagonia, yeah. They're known for their customer loyalty.
Yes.
And their commitment to their values.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yvon Chouinard bootstrapped the company.
He did, yes. Started as a small climbing gear retailer.
Yep.
And they've always prioritized quality products and environmental sustainability.
Yep.
And they've built one of the most respected brands in the world.
Yes. And they've done it all by staying true to their values.
Absolutely.
And by really focusing on their customers.
Yeah.
And speaking of Yvon Chouinard, he wrote a book called Let My People Go Surfing.
Oh, yeah. Great book.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting look at their company philosophy.
It is, and I think it really highlights that customer-centric approach.
Yeah, and how that can be a powerful engine for growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about pressure and burnout.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, because, the startup world is already pretty intense.
It is. It's high pressure, high stakes.
Yeah, and when you add in the pressure of VC funding.
Right. You got to hit those milestones.
You got to hit those milestones.
Got to keep the investors happy.
You keep the investors happy. It can be a recipe for burnout.
It can be, yeah.
But bootstrapping can actually create a much more sustainable and healthy work environment.
It can, because you're not constantly in that fundraising mode.
Right.
You can focus on building the business
Yeah.
at a more sustainable pace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Notion is a really interesting example of this.
Notion, yeah, they bootstrapped for several years.
Yeah.
Before they raised any funding.
Yeah, they focused on building a product that people loved.
And they did a great job of it.
They did.
Yeah.
And they eventually achieved unicorn status.
Billion-dollar valuation.
Billion-dollar valuation.
Yeah.
So it's a really great example of how you can build successful business.
Without all that external pressure.
Without all that external pressure. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about innovation, because I think that's another...
Oh, yeah. Innovate. That's the lifeblood of any startup.
It is.
Right?
And bootstrapping can actually foster innovation.
It can, because you have the freedom to experiment.
Yes.
You're not beholden to investors.
Yeah.
You can try new things. You can pivot if you need to.
Yeah.
You can really be agile.
You can, and you could be creative.
Absolutely. You know, you can think outside the box.
Yeah.
And Atlassian is a fantastic example of this.
Atlassian, yeah, there's a software giant now.
They are.
But they started with a $10,000 credit card loan.
It's incredible.
It is, yeah. They bootstrapped their way to success.
Yeah.
And they did it by focusing on innovation.
Yes.
Building tools that people really needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of innovation, there's a great book called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries.
Oh, yeah. Lean Startup, another classic.
Yeah. Yeah. And while it's not specifically about bootstrapping,
right,
it really aligns with that idea of experimentation.
And iteration.
Yes.
And getting customer feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, as we kind of wrap up here, let's recap some of the key advantages of bootstrapping.
Yeah, let's do a quick recap.
So first of all, control.
Control, absolutely.
You retain complete control over your vision.
Your company's your destiny.
Your company, your destiny. Yeah. Second, profitability. Profitability, you're forced to focus on it.
From day one.
From day one, yeah.
Yeah. Third, resilience.
Resilience, you learn to do more with less.
Yes, you learn to adapt. You learn to overcome challenges.
You become a problem-solving machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fourth, dilution.
Dilution, you avoid giving away equity. You keep more of your company.
You keep more of the pie.
Yes, you keep more of the pie.
Yeah.
Fifth, customer focus.
Customer focus, you can really prioritize your customers.
Yes.
Without the pressure of investors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sixth, pressure and burnout.
Pressure and burnout, you can create a more sustainable work environment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And seventh, innovation.
Innovation, you have the freedom to experiment and try new things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So while bootstrapping is definitely challenging.
It is. It's not for the faint of heart.
It's not.
Yeah.
It can be an incredibly rewarding path.
It can be. Yep.
And we've seen examples of companies like Mailchimp,
Basecamp,
Spanx, GitHub.
And countless others. And countless others that have achieved massive success.
Massive success without ever taking on external funding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have one final book recommendation for you.
Oh, yeah.
The Millionaire Fast Lane by M.J. DeMarco.
The Millionaire Fast Lane, great book.
Yeah.
It challenges the traditional slow lane to wealth.
Yeah.
And it advocates for entrepreneurship as a faster route to financial independence.
Yeah, and I think that aligns perfectly with this idea of bootstrapping.
It does, yeah.
You know, building a business that generates real value.
And taking control of your own financial destiny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as you think about all of this information, I want you to ask yourself a question.
Yeah, what's the question?
What truly defines success for a business?
That's a good question.
Is it always about rapid growth?
Fueled by outside investment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or can a more controlled,
self-funded
journey actually lead to a more sustainable and ultimately more rewarding outcome?
That's something to ponder.
It is something to ponder.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to leave it for today.
I agree.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
On this deep dive into bootstrapping.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it has been fun.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you next time.
See you next time.
All right, bye.